Hey, good morning, Gold Creek. My name is Pablo Navarro, and I am the worship pastor here at the Mill Creek campus. And I am with...
I'm Danilo. I'm the audio engineer for Gold Creek, Mill Creek campus.
That's him.
This is
So
me.
thanks for joining us on GC 365, day 133. It is May 13th today, and it's a good day. I can feel it. Do you think it's a good day today?
Yeah, I wonder what the weather's like.
It's going to be a beautiful day. I don't know what the weather's like. I don't have the weather app right now. But, hey, it's going to be a great day, and we got some awesome things to talk about. So why don't we dive right in?
Okay.
So we had
I thought I was going to get a riddle from you today or something.
no riddles this time. No riddles. Last time I went over way too long because of those darn riddles. They were fun. And maybe, on the next one, we'll do something fun like that
has
again.
To be broken before you can use it.
Did you just look that up right now?
Maybe.
No riddles. I don't know. Okay, fine. Just go.
It's an egg.
Oh, it has to be broken.
Pablo
Okay.
doesn't do it.
Yeah. Good one. Okay, let's move on. 1 Samuel chapter 14. We're talking about Jonathan. He is a bold man.
He's got stones.
And he is awesome. We got to be like Jonathan. So what'd you take from 1 Samuel chapter 14?
A lot. The thing that really stood out to me was that like his armor bearer and Jonathan, they took on 20 men. That was crazy to me. But like a lot more stood out than that. How many guys do you think you could take in a fight?
I mean, at least 10. At least. I mean, Jonathan, he probably was little, bold, but he was
10
little.
guys?
Yeah, maybe 10.
Maybe. That's
Okay, fine, 9. No less than 9.
All right.
Hey, I think Jonathan was fearless. He was bold. He was courageous. And to me, what stands out is he was looking for something to do. He was like, God is on our side. What am I doing? His father Saul was sitting under a pomegranate tree or some sort, just hanging out. I don't know what he was doing. And Jonathan just took action into his own hands. And I thought that was such a cool thing because as we read the Bible, we realize that God is never looking for the biggest, for the strongest, most respected person, the wealthiest person. He's not looking for those things that us as humans kind of tend to gravitate towards. Oh, that's a leader, or that's a this, that's a that, because of, their stature, or because of how they look, or, where they come from. And so I just feel like this is a perfect example of how God is just looking to use people with bold faith that are willing to trust him regardless of the circumstance.
Yeah. It's cool because he totally equips Jonathan when he just wants to follow the Lord. He just trusts that the Lord is gonna like equip him to do what he is gonna do. So like the difference in his leadership in the situation versus like Saul's, like Saul is really set in like what he knows, and there's kind of this pride thing where he's like, yeah, nobody eat until I exact my revenge on my enemies. And then Jonathan just follows the voice of the Lord and totally finds a victory. It's awesome.
Yeah. And that's awesome. And I think it's like, if I was Jonathan's armor bearer,
yeah,
I'd like, I don't know, like I'd like speak up. I'm like, hey dude, I don't know if this is a smart idea. There's 20 of them and there's 2 of us.
But his armor bearer just said, okay, I'm with you. I'm with you.
Which is such a cool response. I feel like we all need to have an armor bearer like that in our lives. Someone who is willing to fight with us. And by fight, obviously, we're not talking about physically fighting, right? We're talking about someone who will pray with us, someone who will rage like spiritual warfare with us. Like when we're going through stuff where we see ourselves like at a standstill, like someone that's going to encourage us, someone that's going to stand by us through the good times and through the hard times as well. And if we don't have that, I think the next question to ask is, are we that to someone else?
Yeah, I think it's really important to the guys I do fellowship with. There's this one dude, his name's Nolan, and he just serves at the drop of a hat. Like anytime, I let him know that I'm going through something tough, he'll just pray for me on the spot. And like, there's been a couple times where I'll just like text all the guys. It's like, hey, I need help. Like my neighbor's moving, or Something like that. And he's like showed up like most every time.
That's awesome. I know Nolan. If we're talking about the same Nolan, he's a good guy.
Yeah.
So, cool. Yeah, I mean, are we that to someone else? Do we have that in our lives? I think we should strive to be that for someone else, and also strive to have that in our life. It's accountability, it's partnership, it's brotherhood or sisterhood, it's trust. And so I think that's awesome. I love that concept of the armor bearer. Back in those days, the armor bearer was more of a, hey, if you were some sort of leader in the army, you had an assistant to hold your gear, to hold your sword, to hold your shield. And I mean, that just speaks volume. It's humility. It's servanthood. It's just a bunch of awesome things that we might not see too commonly nowadays. So
yeah, I've been trying to be like an armor bearer in a way that like I'm trying to memorize scripture because I'm finding out more and more. It's like there's these situations where I'm in where I feel like I want to evangelize to someone, and I know like the gist of scripture, but I don't know it like verbatim, or I don't know it enough to feel comfortable enough to share. So I think it's a balance of like me like actually memorizing verses and just being bold enough to share anyway.
Sure.
I'm trying to find that balance.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. And so they go and they say, and Jonathan says, okay, this is how we know God's going to fight this battle for us. If they say, stay right there, we're coming to you, let's go, because God's not fighting this battle with us or for us. But if they say, come on down here and we'll show you, I forgot exactly the way he said it. It was pretty funny, but the way he said it, like, we'll teach you guys a lesson, right? Sort of deal.
It's pretty funny.
Then like we go down there and God has our back. Mm-hmm. So that's what happens.
Them too, because didn't they say they scattered their bodies across like
they scattered like half an acre or like something like crazy. That. And it's like 2 guys versus 20. And I just automatically imagine like the coolest movie scene, right? Where these guys are just
going straight
slashing through everyone. And obviously it's some sort of cool war movie.
9 guys, really? You think you could take on 9 guys in a fight?
9 guys. Cool. I'm sticking to that. 9, right. That's it.
Fair.
And it's so cool because then Saul then hears what's going on. The lookouts see the Philistines scatter because then they start getting scared. Like, who are these 2 crazy guys just destroying 20 guys, right?
And then they start like killing each other.
Then they get like confusion starts rolling through their camp and they start killing each other. And I'm like, man, this is such a cool story.
It feels like a movie.
It
does.
Like,
it feels like it would be like a comedy movie that's just like these 2 super cool dudes, like just buff, comically ripped guys just come in and kill 20 dudes, and then the rest of them go crazy and they're like,
oh no, what are we gonna do? Let's just kill each other. And they start killing each other. So that's really cool when we know that just God has our back. He fights our battles for us. And even in circumstances that don't make sense or just kind of raise an eyebrow, so to speak, it's just like, hey, if you just almost blindly trust God, like he's gonna make it happen one way or another, even if it doesn't make sense to us. So I thought,
it's cool because it doesn't become blind anymore. Like the more you trust God, the more you know why you're trusting God, because he
it's more less blind, and you're starting to see more. In a sense, spiritually, because you get what familiar. God can do.
You get familiar with it.
Yeah. So I thought that was such a cool read. I'm glad this was our reading for today. Let's jump now to John chapter 7, verse 31. I'll start this one off. So I think one of the biggest takeaways for me is the first verse 31 that says, many among the crowds at the temple believed in him. After all, they said, would you expect the Messiah to do more miraculous signs than this man has done? And I thought that was so true, because it's like they've seen Jesus do so many cool things. Like in many instances throughout the Gospels, we read, that the Pharisees were thinking these evil thoughts or had questions in their minds or were doubting. And even Jesus like would read their minds or know what they were thinking, right? And that to me, it's like he would respond, why do you say this? Or why do you feel this? Or why do you think this, right? If I'm just like a spectator watching Jesus do what he's doing, and in my mind, I start thinking something and I don't actually physically say it, and he responds to me, I'd be like freaked out. Mm-hmm. Like I'm just a spectator and I'm just like, whoa, that's crazy. How did he do that? And then he just looks at me and says, this is how he did that, and I would just be like, whoa, this guy is something else. Like, he's
the real deal.
He's the real deal. This is a Messiah we've been waiting for.
He fulfills too many prophecies. Oh,
like so many, like just checks off every box, right? And they've seen him do amazing things, bring people back to life from death and heal the sick and the lame and the blind and just so many amazing things. And they're just still like, would you expect the Messiah to do more miraculous signs than this man has done? But yet, even in spite of that, there was still so much confusion and there was just still so much doubt and people were not on the same page. Some people believed, some people didn't. Some people thought he was just a prophet. Some people thought he was actually the Messiah. They could not agree on one thing. But I love Jesus on his response here on verse 37. He says, on the last day, the climax of the festival, Jesus stood and shouted to the crowds, anyone who is thirsty may come to me. Anyone who believes in me may come and drink, for the scriptures declare rivers of living water will flow from his heart. And I thought that was so cool because, Jesus, he came to bridge that gap, right, between man and God. He was the one who gave his life and came to this earth and gave his life so that anyone who was thirsty may come. See, and before, as we're reading, even now through the Old Testament, that Israel was a special possession. Israel were the ones that were chosen by God, but they kept turning their back on God back and forth. And until finally God just had enough and said, you know what, this is going to be available to everyone. Salvation, the gift of having a relationship with God is going to be available to anyone. And I love that he says, anyone who is thirsty may come to me. And so that just speaks volumes to me. And I think that's just a powerful verse there. What stood out to you in these verses?
Well, there's an interesting parallel there with what he says. Anyone who is thirsty may come to me. Rivers of living water will flow from his heart. It's just neat because, in 1 Samuel, the reading we did today, it's like in Saul's leadership, like no one could eat. So when Jonathan ate some of the honeycomb and he was feeling super refreshed, the men were like, oh, whoa, like we're not supposed to do that. And Jesus just kind of comes in and breaks the mold and says, anyone who comes to me will be refreshed. I am the source of living water. So it's neat because we can all be like Jonathan in that moment. That's just trusting in his leadership being refreshed, straight from the source, of life, which is super cool. Super cool.
Yeah, man, that's good. Let's jump to Psalms 109 now. So this one I had to kind of read over and over and over and over again. It was one that didn't strike me with anything at first, but as I was kind of thoughtfully thinking through it and praying through it and trying to see, one thing really stood out to me, and that's in this passage in verse 4. It says, I love them, speaking about his enemies, right? Because David is in trouble once again, and his enemies are trying to attack him, and he's now crying out to God, and he says, I love them, but they try to destroy me with accusations, even as I am praying for them. And I think that stood out to me after reading this chapter a couple of times, because that is a New Testament concept. That is something that wasn't really well known or really well done as we read through the Old Testament, where it's you're praying and you're loving on your enemies. Because Jesus says, right? Jesus comes and he says, love your enemies, pray for them, bless them, don't curse them, and there's a whole sermon that he does on that in the New Testament.
Yeah.
And so it's cool to see David acting on that and this time, right? And so he says, I love them, but they try to destroy me with accusations, even as I am praying for them. And I thought that was just so cool to see that, as he's praying to God, and I think David is completely capable of taking vengeance into his own hands. I think he's perfectly capable. I don't think it's a lack of faith, a lack of boldness, a lack of courage or resources. Like, this is the man who stood up to Goliath, right? When he had nothing.
It's possible for him to totally
he could totally do it, and God could totally back him up, I felt, right? But I think that he understood that God's vengeance was way better than what he can do.
Yeah, wow.
And so he's praying in this moment. He's saying, God, they're trying to curse me. They're trying to do this to me. God, would you take care of them? Would you do this? Would those curses that they want on me, would that be their punishment towards them? And he's letting God be the one who avenges, his life.
It's cool because it's like another precursor of grace, and like the grace that Jesus had for us. Because, he was God. He's man and God. So he didn't have to lay down his life like that. He didn't have to be tortured and be hung on a cross. He could have been like, I am God, and crush his persecutors, but he didn't. And that's just like,
he loved them. He loved us.
Yeah.
Even when we were being terrible, and even while we were sinners, he died for us. So I think that's just awesome to see that he loved them and he prayed for his enemies. Mm-hmm. Let's move on to the last verse, Proverbs chapter 15. I think the biggest takeaway from me is, only a fool despises a parent's discipline. Whoever learns from correction is wise. Mm-hmm. And I just apply that to God being our Father. And no one likes discipline. No one likes to be disciplined or be called out or be put on the spot. Like, it's just, it's not our nature to just be like, oh, I don't like that, right? Yeah. But it's important that we learn from it.
Yeah. I think it's been really helpful for me to start embracing and really owning my mistakes and like my failures, because it's like those are really good teachers for me, and I it's like the more honest I can be with myself, the easier it is to grow from mistakes.
Exactly.
It's cool.
And that's it's what makes us wise. Whoever learns from correction is wise. Only a fool despises a parent's discipline. So that's, growing up in life and also spiritually with God. God disciplines those who he loves, those who are called his children. And we shouldn't despise it. We should be like, all right, God, what are you trying to teach me in this situation? And I'll end it with this. I remember a good friend of mine once said, I don't have bad days. I have character building days. Nice. And I'm like, oh, that's so good, because cool. It's just like, what is God trying to teach me today? Like, what did I do that, God's trying to discipline me and show me this is a correct way of doing it. And it's just an opportunity to grow. It's an opportunity to build your character, to grow spiritually in Christ. And so when we do that, we become wise. And wise in the eyes of God is the best thing. So that's all we have for you guys today. Thank you for joining us. Have a great day, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care.